The throne room shook with the sound of bombardment. The crystalline walls of the Xylarian palace, once thought unbreakable, now pulsed with fractures as enemy artillery ripped through the city outside. Queen Serethis stood tall before her throne, her silver carapace gleaming faintly in the shattered light of the stained glass domes. Around her, her elite guard, 8 towering insectoid warriors bred from the finest genes of her people, shifted uneasily, their antennae twitching with dread. The war had lasted 3 years. 3 years of attrition, of constant sieges, of her empire slowly reduced to ashes under the relentless march of the Threx dominion. She had hoped that today, her guard, her sworn protectors, would stand beside her as the enemy breached the gates. But as the shrieks of Threx war beasts echoed closer, she saw the faltering in their compound eyes. And then the unthinkable. The palace doors rattled. A concussive blast sent shards of crystal cascading. The enemy had breached the inner sanctum. The guards, her guards, looked once to her, then once to one another and broke. "Forgive us, my queen," one hissed in the old tongue. And then they fled. All but one figure remained in the chamber. Not insectoid. Not Xylarian. A man clad in dented composite armor, his insignia scorched from months of battle. A human soldier, his rifle nearly broken, his body bruised and battered. Serethis blinked in disbelief. "Why do you stay, off-worlder? Even my own blood-born guardians abandon me." Private Daniel Reeve adjusted the rifle strap on his shoulder and cracked a grin through bloodied lips. "Well, your majesty, I wasn't raised to run." The beginning. Daniel had not been meant to be here at all. A human mercenary drafted into the Xylarian cause after Earth signed a defense pact. He had been assigned as little more than a liaison, one among thousands of human auxiliaries supporting the alien empire. The war had thrown him into battle after battle, but by chance and perhaps fate, he had been transferred to the Queen's Capital Guard just weeks before the siege. The Xylarians did not trust him at first. To them, humans were strange, soft-skinned mammals that bled easily, that lacked chitin armor or venomous fangs, that had no natural defenses except wit and stubbornness. But Serethis had seen in him something different. His persistence, his refusal to bow when many others did. He carried scars as if they were medals. When the siege began, Daniel stayed close to the Queen's command chamber. He watched as city districts fell one by one. He listened to Serethis argue with her generals, demanding loyalty, demanding sacrifice, even as morale faltered. He could see the weight pressing down on her carapaced shoulders. She was more than a monarch. She was a symbol, and symbols could not break. But as the days bled into nights, her forces dwindled. Supplies ran out. And finally, the enemy reached the palace. Now, when her own guards scattered like frightened insects, Daniel's instincts surged. He knew the stories of queens slain, of empires toppled. He saw her standing proud, refusing to kneel even as death approached. Something inside him, the same stubborn streak that had carried humans through centuries of war and survival, snapped into action. The middle. The Threx soldiers stormed into the throne room. Hulking reptilian brutes clad in jagged armor, their weapons glowing with plasma charges, their war cries echoing like thunder. Behind them lumbered a siege beast, a four-legged monstrosity with armored scales and jaws that could crush tanks. Serethis raised her scepter, defiant. "I am Serethis, Queen of Xylaria. Strike me if you dare, and my people's vengeance will outlast the stars." The Threx commander laughed, a guttural rumble. "Your people. They are already dust." He raised his weapon, aimed squarely at her chest. Daniel moved without thinking. He leapt forward, placing himself between the queen and the barrel of the plasma rifle. The bolt fired. Heat seared through his armor. Pain like fire lanced across his ribs, nearly dropping him to the ground. But he held firm, teeth gritted. Cerethus's compound eyes widened. "Human! Stay behind me," Daniel growled. His rifle barked in response, bullets tearing into the nearest Threx warrior. The reptilian fell, but another surged forward. The room erupted into chaos. Plasma bolts scorched the crystalline walls. Daniel weaved, firing bursts, ducking behind shattered pillars, always keeping himself between the queen and the attackers. His armor smoked, his side bled freely, but he fought like a man possessed. Cerethus, unused to such reckless defiance, found herself shaken. Her people believed in order, hierarchy, and obedience. When faced with impossible odds, Xylarians retreated, regrouped, recalculated. But this human, this fragile creature of flesh, simply refused to yield. He fought with a desperation she had never witnessed. More Threx soldiers poured into the chamber. Daniel was running out of ammo. He glanced back at the queen. "Any chance you've got a hidden escape tunnel in this fancy palace?" "There is," she admitted, "but it leads outside the city. It will not save me." "Maybe not," he muttered, reloading the last of his rounds. "But it might save us." They fought their way to the tunnel entrance, Daniel's rifle spitting fire until it clicked empty. Then he drew his combat knife, slashing at claws and teeth, shielding the queen with his own battered frame. At one point the siege beast lunged. Its jaws clamped onto his shoulder plate, tearing through metal. Daniel screamed, driving the knife into its eye until it recoiled. The queen, overwhelmed by the sight, felt something strange stir within her chest. This human was not just protecting her. He was bleeding for her. Together they reached the hidden passage. Daniel shoved her inside, then collapsed against the wall, breathing raggedly. "Why?" Cerethus asked, her voice trembling. "You are not my subject. You owe me no loyalty. Why risk everything?" Daniel looked up at her, sweat and blood dripping into his eyes. "Because somebody has to. You stand for your people. If you fall, they fall. And if I'm the only one left to stop that, then I'll damn well try." For the first time in cycles, Cerethus felt her resolve shake, not from despair, but from something new. Respect. The ending. They fled into the ruins beyond the palace. Daniel grew weaker with each step, his wounds grave. Yet he pressed on, guiding her through rubble, shielding her from patrols. At night, he insisted she rest while he stood guard, even when his body screamed for sleep. The queen found herself watching him more closely. Humans, she realized, were not armored like her kind, nor bred for obedience like her guards. And yet this man embodied something her empire had long forgotten: courage unbound by calculation. Days later, as the Threx closed in, a miracle arrived. Human reinforcements, Earth's fleet, answering the desperate call of their lone soldier's last transmission, descended upon the battlefield. Warships roared, guns blazing, scattering the Threx lines. Daniel, half conscious, smiled faintly as he heard the thunder of human cannons. Cerethus knelt beside him. "Do not close your eyes, human. You have given me more than loyalty. You have reminded me what it means to fight." He chuckled weakly. "Glad I could be useful." He collapsed into her arms. When the humans secured the capital, they found an alien queen cradling a battered soldier, refusing to let him go.